me and a privilege to appear before this August meeting today and make this presentation before the distinguished Senate President and the distinguished Committee of the Senate on Power. Following the passage of the Electricity Power Sector Reform Act of 2005, the Nigerian power sector is now largely privately owned, having been unbundled into 6 generating companies, 11 distribution companies, and the Transmission Company of Nigeria. TCN remains fully government-owned, while in the current stage of the market development known as transition market, the government-owned Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading Company, MBET, fulfills the role of a bulk trader. MBET buys electricity from the GENCOs, including independent power producers, IPPs, under power purchase agreements, and sells to DISCOs. The transition from a publicly owned sector to largely private-owned sector did not bring the expected outcomes, and the sector has been under a lot of stress, especially in terms of liquidity. The challenges in the sector today includes distribution companies on the average currently report only about 40% of the aggregate technical and commercial losses. Tariff regulation on all market contracts have not been enforced since privatization. And also, the federal government has been spending billions of naira to fund tariff shortfalls, and its liabilities are increasing steadily every year. Key stakeholders in the sector all fell short of expected contributions for achieving the desired turnaround envisaged by the reform initiatives. We are of the view that another level of reform process is required to develop an integrated approach for resolving regulatory and policy failures, to establish fiscally sustainable financing plan by the federal government to ensure full funding for tariff shortfalls and the implementation of a comprehensive performance management plan. To this end, the federal government has initiated several projects in conjunction with development partners to revamp the power sector. These initiatives are work in progress, and they include projects with the World Bank, the African Development Bank, the French Development Agency, and the China Exim Bank, amongst others. Some of the major projects include: 1, the Nigerian Electricity Transmission and Access Project in the sum of 486 million naira. This is with the World Bank. There's also the Nigerian Electrification Project in the sum of 350 million naira, also with the World Bank, and another 200 million naira with the African Development Bank for the same project. This is under process right now.
Sorry, Honorable Minister, dollars, not naira.
Dollars, sorry. When I look at the budget, it's naira I keep referring to. Apologies, please. So the first one is Nigerian Electricity Transmission and Access Project, $486 million, World Bank. The Nigerian Electrification Project, $350 million, World Bank, and then $250 million African Development Bank for the same project. There's also the North Core Dorsal North Interconnector Project. This is $26 million. It's a World Bank regional project, is currently under processing. There's the Abuja Power Feeding Scheme. This is in the sum of $470 million. This is provided by AFDB, and this is also undergoing approval processes. There's a Power Sector Recovery Program for Results. This is a World Bank program in the sum of $750 million, also undergoing approval process. We also have the Zingeru 700 megawatts hydropower project. This is in the sum of $984.32 million. This is a China Exim Bank funded project, and it's already very, very well advanced. Finally, most of the projects that I've listed just now are part of the power sector recovery program, which is designed to restore the financial viability of the Nigerian electricity power sector, improve transparency and service delivery, resolve consumer complaints, reduce losses and energy theft, and reset the Nigerian electricity supply industry for future growth. The first part of the PSRP has recently been negotiated and expected to commence implementation once all necessary negotiations and procedures have been met. These interventions are all made possible due to the role of the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning as a borrower, and are at various stages of implementation or negotiation. It is expected that the power sector should soon be on a sustainable recovery path when all initiated projects get all the necessary approvals and implementation begins and it becomes fully operational. Let me just emphasize that the role of Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning is that of the borrower, that the implementation of these projects are the responsibility of the Ministry of Power and its agencies. Your Excellency and distinguished senators, I have a presentation document that I've circulated, and I'm just asking whether members have a copy. Thank you. I'll go through this presentation. The first part, slide 1, is some information about the payment assurance facility that was advanced by the Central Bank of Nigeria to the government. It was meant to be a bridge facility because in 2017 there was a negotiation going on between the World Bank and the Nigerian government to provide power funding for the power sector. The negotiations became overextended because the sector didn't have sufficient understanding to move forward, and it became necessary for the Central Bank of Nigeria to provide a bridge facility, sequel to the finalization of the power sector recovery loan from the World Bank. This 701 billion was provided by the Central Bank in January 2017. It was supposed to run from January 2017 to January 2018. Up to January 2018 and early January 19, the World Bank financing was still not crystallized because of differences within the sector. And it became necessary, again, for the Central Bank to extend this 701 with 600 billion to make it 1.301 billion. Again, this was supposed to be a bridge financing that was to be recovered or repaid back from the financing from the World Bank. Secondly, there is International Development Agency support for the Nigerian electricity sector, and I've mentioned some of them earlier on. There's also the power sector recovery program and the financing plan for that program. The power sector recovery program was launched by the Ministry of Power, then Ministry of Power, Works and Housing in 2017. So finance was responsible for the financing component of that plan. There's also the guarantees of the federal government of Nigeria to generation plants in MBET's portfolio, and some of them were secured by World Bank Payment Guarantee Facility. The fifth aspect that I want to address is also the Nigerian Electricity Market Stabilization Facility and report on the status of that funding. We had also submitted this schedule, and as I mentioned in my briefing remark on slide 2 is the same information. So I'll move to slide 3 and to start addressing this meeting on the summary of the utilization and the beneficiaries of the funding. For the 701 payment assurance facility from the central bank, this was approved by the President in Council on the 1st of March 2017 to augment market proceeds MBET earns for the settlement of the sector to enable the government meet at least the minimum payment requirements for the generation plants. It was targeted to be 80%, while for the gas suppliers it was targeted to be 90%. The PAF is a facility line at the central bank guaranteed by the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and Planning. CBN does not credit MBET's TSA account. Instead, following MBET's settlement process, it sends all the documentation to the central bank for the bank to ratify and credit the generation and the gas companies. The underlying assumption that is made here is that the monthly payment by the distribution companies will follow a constantly increasing pattern, and MBET drawdown from the facility will follow a constantly decreasing pattern. It was assumed that by December 2018, MBET will be earning over 70% of the electricity itself to the distribution companies. Unfortunately, this did not happen. So in the next slide, what I have is a table that shows the 700 billion utilization. So the first column on the table is the list of the generating companies, and the second column is the amounts disbursed in 2017, followed by the amount disbursed in 2018, and what is disbursed in 2019 to show the total disbursement of 701 billion over these 27 generation companies. So this shows that in 2017, 289 billion was disbursed. In 2018, 334 billion was disbursed. In 2019, 77.4 billion was disbursed. That's the total of the 701. On the next slide, I have a summary of the utilization of the 600 billion, the extension facility to the 701 billion. This facility was also used to pay generation companies as well as gas companies of 100% of their invoices that are scheduled, and this was done in tranches. So in tranche A of the 600 billion, settlement of invoices, a settlement was made for invoices of January to March, and the total disbursement amount was 58.07 billion. While in tranche B, the settlement of invoices of April 2019 to September 2019, the total disbursed amount is 212.64 billion. Tranches C and D, which were to cover invoices of October 2019 to December 2019, that's for tranche C, and then tranche D, January 2020 to December 2020. So 107.71 in 2000 for tranche C, and 164.88 for tranche D are not yet disbursed. The principle is the electricity sector, when an invoice is issued, the repayment period is 90 days after. So there's a 90-day lag for the actual payment. So the next slide also just shows a breakdown of the disbursements as defined in the previous schedule, and the balance that is drawn and the undrawn balance of the 600 billion PAF extension facility. On the next slide, I have some information on the development partner support. There are multiple supports to the federal government agencies in the Nigerian electricity sector. The table on this page shows the support that accrued to MBET so far, usually paid directly from the development partners to the procuring entity. So the first is the consultancy services for the development of business case for MBET's library corporate directorate in the sum of 17.8 million naira. This is a World Bank financing. The second also is a consultancy service for Embed Business Plan for Enterprise Resource Plan ERP. This is 23.4 million naira, also a World Bank funding. The third is the MPSS support to training, executive and delivery for Embed staff. This is 30 million naira. This was provided by DFI. So these are grants, their support by the development partners to government. They're not loans. The power sector recovery program and the financing component of it is what I want to speak on next. The set of coordinating actions which the federal government of Nigeria is expected to take over a 5-year period to reset the sector, placing it on a sustainable development and growth trajectory. So these actions include 1, operational actions, 2, governance and regulatory actions, 3, financial actions. The financial actions include, in 2 parts, enforcement of contracts and liquidity for the sector. The federal government's ERGP, hello?
Sorry.
Thank you. The federal government Economic Recovery and Growth Plan for 2017 to 2020 sets out the medium-term reforms, structural reforms that are required to diversify the Nigerian economy, including expanding power sector infrastructure as one of its top priorities. The objectives of the PSRP, Power Sector Recovery Plan, is 1, the renewal of Nigeria's economy by rebuilding a functioning and fair power system through the restoration of sectors' financial viability, improving power supply reliability to meet growing demand, strengthening the sector's institutional framework and increase in transparency, implementing policies that promote and encourage investor confidence in the sector, and 5, institutionalizing the contract-based electricity market. The financing plan of the PSRP was prepared by a multi-agency technical committee led by the Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, and it consists of the following agencies. So we had NERC, the regulator, Central Bank, NBET, BPE, Ministry of Power, Budget Office of the Federation, and the Debt Management Office. The financing plan is credible, it is realistic. We sought for it to be fiscally affordable as well as sustainable. The financing plan quantifies the use of funds for the following. 1, historical shortfalls in the new 2020 to 2021 tariff. The federal government required during the 2020 to 2027 period to cover historical shortfall areas now which have accrued to date. Secondly, there is also the requirement for debt service payments for the PAF to the central bank and contingent liabilities that may become due within the sector. The next slide just shows a pictorial representation of the financing needs of the sector. For 2020, the maximum source of fund that will be available will be the maximum funds that will be available within the sector will be in the sum of 420 billion naira. And the sources of these funds are 174 billion from the PAF, remaining PAF extension facility, 89 billion from the 2020 budget, 137 billion from the World Bank loan, which we are still processing. And this is equivalent to $380 million. The use of the funds for this 400 billion will be 60 billion interest only, requested, which we are seeking to request for delay in principle. There's also the tariff arrears to be cleared, and also the contingency fund. Then there will be the 320 of new tariff shortfalls that is to accrue in this year of 2020. So the PSRP funds for the year 2020 as the base content of this we're using the guidance of the crunching of these funds and implementing it, hope to implement it accordingly. While the 2020 budget has the 89 billion provided, and also we are able to access the CBN extension facility, the World Bank has just gotten approval for the 750, and they're going to their board for final approval in this month of June. So it means the financial sources for 2020 will be complete. During the course of implementation of the financing plan, and as a result of some of the PPAs that we are committed to, the federal government has had to provide guarantees to generation companies in MBED's portfolio. The summary of the projects and estimated contingent liabilities are provided in the following slides. The total number of projects that have these contingent liabilities are 17, starting from Mazura right down to Braston AS, and the location of these power generating companies are indicated, which is the states where they're located, and then the type of power that they have. Some are gas power, some are solar power. We have also the capacity of each of these generating plants, and we have an indication here that shows whether they have a PPA signed or a PCOA signed or not. So this is the purpose of this slide. The total PRG sizing that has been done here is in the total sum of $280 billion dollars, and the PCO sizing, if it were completely executed, would have been up to 3.54 billion naira. So the actual PRG sizing is $280 million US dollars, while if we had signed up all the PCOAs for these 17 companies, the total commitment would have been 3.54 billion naira. And as dollars, I beg your pardon, because of our limitation of the funds, we have to slow down on committing further PCOAs because the liquidity challenges are really very, very much for the federal government. In fact, we are so stressed that sometimes we have had some of these PRG owners calling in the guarantees, and it's not a good thing for the credit rating of the country. So the next slide shows also is a continuation of the contingent liabilities on executed PPAs that have IPPS, and there are 10 of them, NDC, which are under the Niger Delta Power Holding Company, 10 of its plants. The next set are 8, which are IPPs waiting for the execution of power purchase agreements. The total of what is committed to date, or what will have been committed if everything is executed, will have been 4.512 billion US dollars. But because we haven't executed all the PPAs, the commitment is now 421 million US dollars. So by way of a summary of the PPAs in MBED's portfolio, there are 25 generating companies with contracted capacity of 13,421 megawatts. 20 of these generating companies earn a total payment that consists of 2 elements. So there's the metered energy delivered. There's also the capacity associated with the metered energy that is delivered for each billing period. The 20 plants have a full payment security. By the deed of assignment, MBED pools the bank guarantees it receives from the various distribution companies and assigns the aggregated product to the generating companies, and the product is termed a security trust deed. UBA trustees manage the STDs on behalf of MBED and the generating companies. 5 out of the 25 generating companies in MBED's portfolio have active PPAs. Payment is based on their available and contracted capacity. Tariff for energy and capacity are escalated for local and foreign exchange indexation, and this is done on a monthly or biannual basis. We have a number of active PPAs. And these are PPAs that are classified as take or pay. There are 5 of them. They include Ajip or PI, which has an installed capacity of 480 megawatts. Shell Afam has an installed capacity of 650 megawatts. Olori Shogbo, 304 megawatts. Motosho, 304 megawatts. And Azura, 450 megawatts. The payment assurance guarantee for these 5 installed plants, the ones that have already been utilized are shown on the table in the second to the last column. Finally, I want to also report on the status of the Nigerian Electricity Market Stabilization Fund, which can best be provided, which is provided to NESI, to the Nigerian electricity sector, and it is provided by the Central Bank of Nigeria, and it has 2 components. The first component is, the 2 components are all supposed to support MBET in its management, as well as in its complete management of the sector in various aspects. So the last one is what we call the NEMSEP. Distinguished Senate President, distinguished members, the power sector has not performed at the level in which we expected. And I'm really glad that the National Assembly is looking very closely at the performance of the power sector, because this sector needs a reset. We've been running with this for almost 5 years now and have not seen the results that are expected or the benefits for the citizens. So there's a need for us to step back and rethink what we're doing and replan the reactivation of the sector. And that is what we are doing, what we started doing in terms of reviewing the financing plan by the Ministry of Finance, Budget and Planning, and also that the Ministry of Power, as well as the regulator, has taken a number of measures meant to enforce more discipline in the sector, especially payment discipline, and also meant to correct some of the technical losses that have been bedeviling the sector. I'd like to stop here at this time, Your Excellencies. Thank you very much.
Honorable Minister, on behalf of the committee, no, you can take a seat. On behalf of the committee, thank you, Moses. I know that the Senate President and other senators have a few questions, but before that, we like the MD of MBET